Brian Schimel, I want to ask you about something that you talk extensively about on your website, and this is your concern that the federal government might be overreaching, that you would defend the citizens of Wisconsin, the state of Wisconsin, against overreach by the federal government, intrusion into their lives. Can you give us a sense of what you mean when you say that?
Well, one great example are the EPA regulations that were announced on June 2nd. If those go into effect, they're going to have a very disproportionate harmful effect on Wisconsin compared to other states. We're #1 for manufacturing in America, but we get 62% of our electrical power from coal-fired energy plants. And those plants are clean coal burning plants. So we've got to make sure that when regulations like that go into effect, we don't see Wisconsin have jobs just drain right out of our state, because if they go to Arizona, solar power works better there. Or perhaps on the Great Plains, wind power works better. For Wisconsin, the only reasonable source of reliable and affordable electrical power we have is coal energy right now. And right now, if those regulations went into effect the way they were announced on June 2nd, every one of our plants would have to shut down or spend billions of dollars to get up to the standards. And when they do that, that's going to cost every single consumer a lot more in their energy bill. That will disproportionately affect seniors who have fixed incomes. And it's also going to hit them again when manufacturers can't afford to pay for those energy bills and leave the state, or agriculture can't keep doing its work. And all of a sudden we're going to see people unemployed on top of the higher electricity bills.
So you're serving notice that you're going to defend the state against the EPA regulations. If they impose those, you're going to challenge that. That's
absolutely. If they're imposed the way they were written on June 2nd, I will. They need to strike a balance between environmental regulations and the ability of Wisconsin to have jobs for its people.
Susan?
Look, we can create jobs without having job creation or job growth come at the expense of our environment. I was surprised when Brad, early on in February, talked about joining Republican attorneys general in suing the EPA over carbon dioxide emissions. You know, I grew up hunting and fishing and enjoying natural resources with my father. We love to walk the marshes and go in the woods. And the reality is, it's not a partisan issue when we talk about having clean air and clean water to breathe, when we talk about preserving our natural resources. And so I'm concerned when we talk about, and Brad has talked about, creating a Solicitor General, a political appointee who's going to take on the federal government, whether that's the EPA, whether that's going after the Affordable Care Act. I don't think that our Attorney General should be engaging in those types of activist approaches.
Brian Schimel, let me have you jump into this part of the conversation. You also said on my show that you think Susan Happ will use the Office of Attorney General to obstruct the plans for a new mine in northwestern Wisconsin. What do you base that on?
Statements that were made by all three of the candidates at the State Democratic Party convention.
And can you elaborate?
I don't have the specific quotes in front of me. I'd have to get those. But all three talked about their concerns about the environment, about the mining up north. You know, what Wisconsin cannot afford is an attorney general that is coming into this saying, you know, watch out, because there's some laws I'm not going to enforce. There's some laws I'm not going to defend. We're not hearing any clarity at all here when Ms. Happ says there are a number of things we could do more about or we could do better. We need to have some definition of what that means. I'll enforce the law the way it's written. I don't know how the DOJ is going to enforce DNR laws or DNR violations that aren't referred to the Department of Justice. I don't know where that comes from.
Well, and I can tell you that may be part of the problem, that violations that the DNR is seeing, that they're having direct contact with polluters, and they're not sending them to the Department of Justice. So the first thing you have to do whenever you're elected to a new position would be to talk to the people who are actually seeing the violations. Make sure that you emphasize that these are important regulations, that they will be taken seriously, and to talk to the DNR about the violations they're seeing and to encourage them to refer violators to the Department of Justice.